Welcome to Enabling Commerce Everywhere. And I think we chose this title carefully. It's not really e-commerce, it's commerce. And as Udi alluded to, John Donahoe talked about that this morning, that it's about enabling commerce wherever, whenever consumers want to engage with your brand. And so we've got a great panel for you. Again, my name's David Levy. We have Stephen Berkovich from Deloitte Consulting, Jonathan Klonsky from Something Digital, Jeremy Hanks from Dropship Commerce, Mick Pakwalen from Kiosk, and Reese Hayes from IE Media. And each of these guys brings a different set of experiences and expertise in the omni-channel ecosystem. And so we're going to cover a lot of ground in a short period of time, and we'll take some questions at the end so that you can interact with this panel as well. First of all, I wanted to ask, who here is a merchant or works with merchants that sells through more than one channel? Just kind of show of hands. And then who here is a merchant or works with merchants that one of those channels is a physical store in addition to online? Okay, so this is pretty relevant to most people here, which is great. There's a lot of talk about omni-channel. There was a panel last year, I think, on omni-channel, but I think it's evolving as most things do. It's not just about the change from multi-channel to omni-channel. As you can see here, this is a good quote that explains that it used to be sort of a choreographed linear path for consumers, and now it's becoming sort of a non-choreographed interactions that can take place anywhere. And you can see from this Google report showing statistics on people that research online and buy online versus research online and buy at the store, and all the different combinations thereof, that they're all over the place. And the key for omnichannel, of course, is to be all of those places, and that's certainly easier said than done. There's been an evolution from the beginning of retail, physical retail, e-commerce, multi-channel, selling through different channels, but not necessarily consistently across channels. And now here we are at this omni-channel experience where we are trying to enable commerce anywhere the customer wants to engage. And there are challenges with that we're going to talk about and how to make that happen. So real quick, omni-channel is different than multi-channel. Sometimes they get used interchangeably. Multi-channel really is its own silo and takes place in its own channel. This really cuts across the other way, where consumers can kind of move effortlessly across channels. They can start in one, purchase in another, and check on an order in yet another. It's a way to, again, to engage with them anytime, anywhere, and on any device. It does require new technology, but it also requires business process change that we're going to talk about. And of course, it really is a cross-channel view of your customer information, but it's also a view of your inventory, your order management system, your fulfillment. You've got to really have a universal view of all of these components to be able to fulfill that omni-channel promise. Real quickly, the evolution, I think, of omni-channel, starting with multi-channel, was that consumers would move across channels. They'd go online in one place, and then they'd check their mobile device, and they were starting to switch from channels. And then retailers tried to catch up with that and tried to create some experiences that were similar, whether it was having the same look and feel, if it was having similar pricing or promotions. But then consumer expectations started to increase. And with that, retailers have had to truly invest in new systems to be omni-channel, to support omni-channel. And once they do that, once that you have that system in place, then retailers and consumers can become channel agnostic. So this is kind of the cycle of moving across channel and then starting to create the tools for consistency. But then it comes down to getting an e-commerce platform that can sort of serve as the ecosystem for all of this integration, so that at some point, when you really do reach a point where you can be, both you and your customers are channel agnostic. And so we are going to, let's see here, we're going to talk to our panel about how along this cycle the different challenges and opportunities. I'm going to start with Stephen. You work with some very large retailers and some who have been kind of early adopters in the space. What are some of the challenges that you've seen?
Believe it or not, most of the challenges are not related to technology. It's primarily around processes and people and tools, right? So, for example, as soon as the large retailer allowed returns in store, right, they immediately impacted all the metrics for the in-store personnel, right? Impacted their performance, impacted all of their bonuses as soon as the returns were allowed to, I'm sorry? As soon as the returns were allowed to be brought to the stores, you started to impact the store personnel's incentives, right? So that's a very simple problem that took quite a while to address. The second issue, when you have two merchandising organizations, right, and they all use different tools, it's very difficult to have a consistent view across an item. How well does it do on one channel versus how well does it do in the other channel? Another issue, classic conflict between the pricing, right? The same item can be priced differently in-store because there are two organizations that are setting pricing strategies.
So when you look at some of those challenges, there are things that, there are also opportunities, of course, and one of the opportunities is to engage customers in store. Reese, you've kind of worked on a project recently with Nike. Can you tell us a little about that and how what the goals were for that project?
Yeah, sure. We work with Nike Australia, and before I go into the case study, because it's actually
a little
video.
closer.
Sorry.
Just a little closer. Like.
Before I go into the case study, I just want to touch on metrics for a second. I think that when we're talking about traditional retailers, of which there's a few in the room, and of which Nike to a certain extent is, and most of our clients are, the metrics change, I think, that's most significant is when traditionally store sales have been measured on like-for-like store sales on basically anonymous data. And what is fundamentally, in our view, going to change Main Street retail is moving to a metric that what we call lifetime customer value, built around a single customer view. So it's an interesting story because that's actually how analytics is actually going to change the physical environment inside a store, because the value of the transaction changes from that one pair of shoes you bought into the potential value you represent over the lifetime as a customer. So, yeah.
You want to? I'll quickly show the video of your project.
Okay, so what you guys just saw there was from Nike Australia's internal store. So that was the beta prototype. We're actually rolling that out to 120 multi-brand sporting retail stores. So what that means is obviously sporting goods stores that support more than one brand. So I'll just quickly tell you a little bit about the brief and how we responded to it. Nike came to us and essentially they had a problem, which is that Nike is ultimately in the business of selling technology. And in a multi-brand environment, they need to first stand out, and then they need to second rely upon non-Nike staff to communicate the value of the product. So what you actually just saw then is what's gone into 120 stores, which is the display wall for Nike. And it's really exciting, but it's remarkably simple. So basically, all of the shoes are RFID chipped, and if you recall what you just saw there are 6 large flat panel display screens on either side. There's an iPad in the middle, and there's an RFID reader sitting next to that iPad.
And it's not just about a purchase, right? There's all kinds of ways for them to interact.
That's exactly right. So what this combines incredibly well is both sales conversion and brand experience. So essentially you walk up, you grab a shoe, you place it on the RFID reader, it lights up the iPad, it detects which shoe it is. You can go through and you can watch videos from Nike about how the product was developed. You can see some of their sponsored, so that's for their skate range, so some of their sponsored skaters. And then at the end of that experience, you can either turn around, you can purchase that product, or you might have seen at the end, thankfully it's right there. You've got a couple of options there. You can type in your cell phone number. We've got a QR code as well, or an email address, or you can actually click to buy directly from Nike.com. So if this product's not available in store, you can buy it right then and there from Nike.com, or you can send it to your cell phone to buy it either via mobile once you leave the store, or you can save it for later and review it later on.
So Reese, you mentioned if the product's not in stock. Stephen, tell us a little bit about Endless Aisle.
So the Endless Aisle is a very similar concept to what you guys have seen, but it's across multiple brands, right? So if you're in a, let's say, department store, Macy's, and you're looking at some stuff and whatever you found in a shoe, you don't have your size, you should have a very simple way to come over to a terminal, push one button, and order that shoe that will come to your house, right? And it could be done via an iPad, via your application, via a point-of-sale terminal with the associates' help. I can also tell you that Nike is not the only vendor who's playing with RFID. There's some major department stores that are playing with it as well. So now what they want to use it for is to track their inventory that's located on the floor. But now you can easily see you can take that shoe or whatever the item is, come over to the device and display multi-brand information on it. So that's the concept of the virtual aisle that you'll see more and more in the stores.
So the Endless Aisle is sort of the ability to order anything, whether it's in stock in the store or not. How's that different than virtual inventory?
Well, so there's multiple levels to the virtual inventory. So the first level is more where you don't, your in traditional manner, you usually buy for your e-commerce, you have separate warehouse. For stores, you have separate warehouses, right? Where virtual inventory, where it all becomes commingled, right? So you can be shipping from your stores, you can be shipping the stuff that you like in store from the warehouse, so it's a completely virtual, it's transparent. And so it makes fulfillment easier, but it creates challenges at the stores that you need to train personnel to pick, pack, and ship. The second level of virtualization is where you have an inventory that you don't own, right? Where you get into a concept of drop shipping, where you can actually order from the inventory that you currently don't have at all and have somebody else deliver it for you.
And Jeremy, that's your specialty, right? Dropship commerce. Can you tell them a little bit about how that works?
Yeah. So you have to figure out you don't own the product, which creates a whole set of new issues. You'll never see it, but you're attempting to sell it to a consumer. And there's really 3 major pieces. You have to have a descriptive, product catalog, descriptive data around that product that you can represent virtually in some way, shape, or form, whether it's in a store or whether it's online. And then you have to have inventory visibility as close to real time as possible to whoever has the product. And then you have to have a way to exchange orders with them in a way that matches up with your business model, and tie all of those things together. And if done correctly, it can be very successful. If you look at Amazon with their third-party marketplace, it's just drop shipping with another term. And of their $40 billion of GMV that they did in Q4, about $21 billion was from third-party marketplace. So more than half of Amazon's product that they sell is in essence drop shipped.
And growing faster than the other? It's
growing at 40% compared to Amazon overall at 23. So it's growing 1.6 times as fast as the rest of Amazon. It's just, it's a simple formula. All of us in the room are trying to help people match supply to demand, and they took off the supply constraints to 2 million other sellers. It doesn't have to be vendor or vendor managed. It can be other retailers. It's basically, how do I sell things that I don't have to buy before I sell it? It's utopian, you know. It's like, hey, this is awesome, and you know, inventory-free retail to a retailer sounds very, very interesting, but there is some very tricky components to try to connect it all together.
And I've got the slide up kind of the platform that you use and sort of the complexity of the data that has to go back and forth to make this work. But you found a way to sort of streamline it and to integrate with Magento in a way that makes it possible for people to sell items that they never have in their own stock.
Yeah, it is complicated. You know, at a basic level, there's just a whole bunch of data that's got to move back and forth that you never had to deal with before with some external trading partner. You know, that's what we try to do, and we picked Magento as the first person to partner with because we see the middle market of retail as kind of a place where there's going to be a lot of innovation and a lot of opportunity for new models to play out, and for ultimately for people to compete and win against people like Amazon, because you know, for everything that they have that's good, it's always there's also a lot of negatives there.
So there's a lot of great tools that are evolving to capture consumer demand, whether it's you know, making sure that you never lose a sale because you've always got somewhere to pull the inventory from or someone else to pull the inventory from, and of course the mobile experience and the in-store experience. But there are some real changes on the supply side and on the retailer side that have to occur to be able to support this. Stephen, the role of data in this, the importance of data, can you tell us a little about that?
Even in a simple situation as product data, product catalog data. I've been working with one of the retailers who carries about 500,000 SKUs in stores, and they only carry 100,000 online, right? But the challenge is that the data feeds for the product catalog that they get for stores has very cryptic data descriptions. So they have to go through the enormous effort of cleansing the data before they can present it in a data-friendly format on the website. They're reshooting all the pictures from the catalog. So if they were to get the clean data, now I can carry all 500,000 SKUs online and have a completely virtual inventory, but they don't have it because of the data issues.
And it goes back to, again, those the organizational structure, right? You can't have silos of buying groups using different sets of data. How many people saw about, was it Target.com last week ran into a little controversy with Manatee Gray? Did you guys see that? That actually turned out to be two different buying groups, one for the plus size and one for the misses. Manatee Gray was a color that was used elsewhere, but it was really just entering in, they entered that color in as opposed to the other group, and it was an honest mistake. It turned out to be kind of a little controversial, but that really does highlight how consistent your data has to be for all kinds of reasons. When you have a strategy like this, you really do need an integrated platform. And once you have that integrated platform, there are new channels that can start to open up. It's not just about moving across existing channels. Mick, your product Kiosk is kind of a new channel. Can you tell us a little about what that is, and I can also show your video as well.
Okay. Hi, my name is Mika Pakkolen. Yeah, Kiosk it's a location-aware technology platform that basically embeds any kind of commercial elements, storefronts into any content, whether it's video, broadcasting, images, whether it's applications. So we basically turn all online content into a storefront or into a touch point with a consumer.
Let me quickly show your video here.
We spend a lot of time online and come across things we might want to have. We get ideas from articles, images, videos, images friends have shared with us, blogs. Now you can actually buy anything you see online, thanks to Kiosk. Wherever you see the K, you can discover more. Simply mouse over. In the kiosk, you can see the name of the product, images and the price, always in your own currency and language. You can also find stores close to you. To buy, simply click Get This. You can also share kiosks with your friends to let them know what you like. Kiosk makes it possible for brands to reward you for sharing. You earn when your friends buy from the kiosks you shared. You can also find kiosks in videos. With Kiosk, anything you see can be yours. Simply click Get This.
So that's not as easy as it looks. You've made it look very simple. The ability to use video, images, maps, any visual content to mouse over and be able to transact, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And this video, let me point out, this video was 1 year old, so today we are quite further down the road.
So tell me a little bit about the concept of pre-commerce data.
Yeah, from my point of view, it's basically, I think Reese talked about this single customer value. Basically, less than 10% of all the action, or everything from the consumer value point of view that happens is commerce. So we need to understand the 90%, 90+%, and that might be recommendations, that might be checking just information, that might be bookmarking, sharing, adding to your wish list. So having a platform that not only enables commerce, gives you a full, complete picture of the consumer value at all of these different touch points when the consumer interacts with your product. So that's what it's all about. And
you chose to integrate with Magento, correct?
Yeah, I mean, for us was it was really easy. First of all, Magento is the market leader. It's clearly the fastest growing one. And what I've seen here as well is that they have a really impressive ecosystem. So that was very easy for us.
And Reese, same with you. Your back end for Nike was Magento. What was it about the Magento that made that a good decision?
If I can answer this in kind of a slightly roundabout way, I wanted to make a point actually, because I'm sure the room is probably divided between pure play and recent startup retailers and traditional retailers. We tend to work with both, my agency does another project which you may or may not have heard of. It's called Movember. Started in Australia. In fact, our agency started it. It's now the world's fastest growing charity, and a lot of charities, we raised $140 million last year. And a lot of charities ask us, how can we be like Movember? And my answer to that, and it's in a presentation I often give, is be born at the right time. Movember started in 2005. It has the benefit of not having legacy infrastructure. Now, if you're a traditional retailer, you are deeply embedded in typically not only legacy infrastructure, but legacy operating systems. The way the organization is structured is not necessarily great. And it puts you at a tremendous disadvantage, in my view, at the moment, to startups or pure play online retailers. So to go back to probably your point about Magento, for us, it's the ease of integration. We typically start a project with a traditional retailer, and the brief comes in something like this. We need to be live by X date, which is usually about 5 months from when we get briefed. The average lead time before we even actually start working with the client is probably about 9 months. And that's because of all of this sort of stuff we've just been talking about. We've kind of gone from user experience, which I just talked about, to logistics and analytics. But until all of that stuff like logistics, fulfillment, inventory management, and in particular systems integration is resolved, it's almost impossible. It is impossible to do some of these kind of beautiful experiences that we're kind of seeing here in these case studies. So there's a long way of answering the question. We work across a lot of platforms. We've got 60 developers in our office in Melbourne and other development teams around the world. For us, Magento, it's the ability to integrate with a plethora of both closed and open systems relatively easily in order to actually get a decent user experience going for traditional businesses.
And John, you have an interesting project that you did. Can you tell us a little bit about Harper's Bazaar and what they asked you to build for them?
Absolutely. First, I have a question for the audience, and I wanted to echo what Risa just said. I think it's an excellent point. Who is about to embark on a build? Is there anybody in here who's about to embark on a build? So I think there's some obvious disadvantages to starting right now. First and foremost, in that race to capture some market share, you might be operating at a disadvantage. I mean, if you're a traditional brick and mortar play, maybe you've developed some of that brand recognition. But you have a steep hill to climb. However, the benefit, and I think you're starting to learn here, is you're at a great point in time right now. And I'm looking at Bob Schwartz over there, and when he presided over Magento the last couple of years, omnichannel was a buzz. He was telling everybody, stop saying e-commerce, you're talking omnichannel commerce. And I can tell you that it was really just hype at one point. You couldn't really consider these things. You had so many other things to consider. Now you have such an advantage in coming into this point in time. There's these great extension builders out there. They're great solutions partners. I think we all have sort of developed a little bit of an expertise in what we know in our respective niches, and particularly around the Magento platform, which has been terrific. So I can tell you about Harper's Bazaar. They came to us in a very non-traditional way. They're I guess they tout themselves as America's first fashion magazine. Is Doug Glickman in the audience, by the way? No? Okay. Doug is their director of e-commerce. He's supposed to be here. So hopefully I don't say anything wrong, but they're supposed to be America's first fashion magazine. And they, as publishing struggles a little bit, they're looking for new revenue streams. And they had this great idea. They curate content. They have this very incredible following of individuals who look to them for their fashion tips. And they said, well, why can't we just sell directly to our consumers? And they wanted to do so without owning inventory and without all of the systems basically required to start a retail operation. And so what were they to do? So we built out a platform in Magento. We allowed for fulfillment. We built integration into Saks. The Saks.com platform actually does the fulfillment for Harper's Bazaar.
Saks Fifth Avenue, the
Yeah.
department store.
Exactly. And they also wanted to allow for sort of that smaller, trendier designer who didn't have a real traditional e-commerce operation to become dropshippers. So we created the mechanism to create that network of dropshippers as well. We worked with a lot of partners in that effort, but I think what you have today is this great e-commerce experience where the editorial folks over at Harper's Bazaar are curating content directly on the e-commerce site on shop.bazaar.com. And it's very complimentary. It goes along with the magazine. Very shortly, you'll be able to shop the magazine directly with a device. They've also created a lot of emphasis around mobile. And in fact, one nice omnichannel example, they have on several occasions, created these pop-up stores, which is a real obstacle for people that don't do traditional retail. And the way that they manage it is they put people at various events around the country. They're about to do something at Coachella, and they create this pop-up store. They have some samples, and they facilitate a whole buying experience with their staff using just the e-commerce site on a tablet. I think actually they use some laptops as well. But it's been a great experience.
I've got this slide up here. So this is, Bazaar.com. This is the magazine talking about Coachella and things to pack and looking at fashion. And then you can quickly toggle over to shop.bazaar.com where you see that collection, right? And then here you are in the product catalog itself.
Yes, and one of the great things, one of the advantages obviously for a place like Harper's Bazaar is they know content. And everybody talks about creating sort of a lifestyle experience. You really have to enhance what you say about a product in order to be able to sell it. The average order value at shop.bazaar.com is quite high. You really want to buy from them because of the experience that you share with them, and it's almost an affiliation that you feel with this magazine.
So the way we've traditionally talked about omnichannel is the ability to go online, to purchase, to pick it up in the store, to go to the store, to get on your mobile device, to check prices, to read product reviews. And it's sort of this idea of shifting back and forth seamlessly between channels. And the infrastructure that you need to do that, and the people and process and organizational changes are there. There are a lot of challenges. But once you get there, it seems like Mick and John, you guys are on almost this new channel, this idea of content commerce, where you're not just where the consumer wants to be, you're where they are, period. So
I think
You don't take them away from where they're browsing, do you?
No, I think that's a philosophy that the whole internet was designed on. But it was, if you look on internet, what it was inhabited by was the print people, basically liking to take people from one place to another. What we're doing now is we're changing that completely. So we are basically taking the products to where the people are. The advantage of how you're doing that is really basically is that while you lose control, you gain a lot of control. You gain a lot of insight. You know exactly what's creating impulses is where. So that means that you will be able to understand your consumer, the consumer value, much more deeper than you do today.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the consumers gets away with this annoying, moving them from one place to another, annoying them, trying to attract them. So, being where they are is kind of fundamental from our point of view.
And go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on that point. And going back to some of the stuff we do with Magento, we do a lot of Magento multi-store implementations, and that particularly comes from retailers that have multiple brands. But it actually led us to realize as we started to optimize our processes that we could actually start to deploy stores at an incredibly low cost. And as a platform-based agency with a marketing services division, what we started to do was actually merge campaigns and stores. And we're really actually starting to blow lines. It's kind of an interesting topic of conversation here between kind of content creation, integration, and when you add the capacity to actually, when you build out a Magento platform, in a really robust way, and you can lower the cost of a multi-store implementation, suddenly instead of actually spinning up a campaign that drives traffic to your site, we're actually spinning up new stores that are built around a campaign that are supported by the retailer's brand. So they might do an activity, a seasonal activity, I'll pick Christmas because I guess it's universal from a retailing point of view, where we can actually build out an entire Christmas store for a client where both the campaign and the products are actually put together into one unique experience. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
I have one point to what you said earlier, which I think is really important here, is that keep in mind that people behave differently on different devices. So I think that's key as well. So don't design a service that basically it's equal for all devices, because when you're on your mobile, you're in a different mode. When you're on your pad, you're in a different mode. When you're watching a TV, watching a trailer, whatever, you're in different mode. So keep that in mind when you're in store, whatever. So keep that in mind when you're designing a service for the consumer.
I actually wanted to mention, we have another client, Papyrus Retail Card Stores. They are a very traditional brick and mortar play. And when they came to us, it was several years ago, so this concept of omnichannel didn't really, while again there was a lot of talk, it wasn't a big piece of their roadmap. But I can tell you that the struggles with that traditional brick and mortar to align all of the incentives and the lifestyle of that brand in an e-commerce way and try and complement what's going on in the brick and mortar stores. They have about 400 stores in North America, and they're part of an acquisition of another company in England called Clinton's. That's a very similar kind of store, and they have tremendously high average order value, again, relative to some of the competitors. These are expensive greeting cards. They're developed by artisans. So trying to convey that experience that you get in a store online was a challenge for them, but not only in the design and the implementation of the site, but what was going on in the back end. To sort of echo what Stephen had said before, they had a very traditional ERP system. They run on JDA. Their POS system was an extension of that JDA implementation. The data that was stored in one system didn't translate ideally. There's been a tremendous amount of migration of product detail into the website, which is continues to be a challenge for them. However, they're starting to get it, and I think they found their groove. And as little as it's the little things, like they have a loyalty program, Papyrus Rewards, which has been very successful in the retail side, but it didn't translate into the e-commerce site, and we're implementing that, and I guess it's coming out next couple of days. But that's sort of the steps that they're taking. It's again the traditional versus the non-traditional, and I think.
Well, you had an interesting point. We were talking about that it's not about it's about supporting each channel. It's not about being in being fighting the channel. So on Papyrus, you can get on, you can create a custom invitation, and then that generates a proof that you can then take in store, and then continue that transaction in the store.
Yeah, absolutely. So that the experience, if anybody has purchased wedding or bar mitzvah or whatever invitations,
See John after.
they Papyrus has a very nice custom printing program. They actually they have a retail program, so they work with a lot of the printers from around the country. And what they tried to do was to translate that into the online format. So their custom printing scenario is really an extension of that brick and mortar process, and it works really well to the extent it's not really integrated with what they're doing on the retail level. In fact, the incentives built for salespeople sort of is a contradiction there. However, people are continually coming to the store with a finished proof that they've created online, so they don't have to look through the books and touch and feel the stationery. They have all of the fonts, all of the colors, all of the different types of paper accounted for, and then when they go to the store, it's a much easier process.
So I've got to ask you guys a whole bunch of other questions, but in the few remaining minutes, I want to open it up to anybody here. Any question about commerce? Any question on omnichannel? Anything specific to anything you heard from these guys? Please. Everybody's digesting lunch. So, Stephen, what again, you work with some really large retailers who again were sort of early adopters and are sort of ahead of the curve on omnichannel. What do you see coming with those guys? What's happening now in that space? I noticed that there was a large department store that just named a chief omnichannel officer, someone that doesn't have responsibility over the e-commerce. CEO. Yeah, it should be, right? But this is someone that doesn't just have responsibility over the stores or e-commerce, but really this relationship between the two. Do you think we're going to see more of that?
Absolutely. You'll see convergence between the experience, again, online and in stores, right? You'll see where stores will have much more mobile presence from your phone devices, from tablets attached to the displays, right? You'll be able to interact with your product significantly more. You'll be able to push the button and get the product shipped to you anywhere, right? Why do the stores need to carry all the inventory, right? For example, take bedding, right? You can come over, pick whatever you need, push one button, it's gonna get shipped to you in your house, but the stores don't have to carry the inventory, right? So you're gonna see significantly more of that convergence where it's basically shop anywhere, ship from anywhere.
Well, at the same time, you're going to see the different trend as well, which is taking the offline to the online, because everything is online today. So being present everywhere is kind of one of the things that we're going to see happening for all of these difference, online and offline.
Yeah, and John Dono actually mentioned this morning about Warby Parker and some other brands who were started off as pure play e-commerce and are now seeing the value of creating stores where people can touch and feel the merchandise. They don't carry inventory, they just have enough to try on, at which point you then order to your home. Jeremy, what about drop shipping as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, I think maybe more specific or more broad than drop shipping is just the supply chain. If you look at roughly the disruption caused by e-commerce in the last, say, 15 years, 95% of it has been on the demand side. It's about the consumer, rightfully so. The supply chain today, is the same that it was 40 years ago, and for all intents and purposes, most of the software that runs the supply chain today was, is older than I am. And so you have this supply visibility problem mashed up with kind of this integration, challenge. You're especially I think in this middle market world of where there's a lot of physical stores. I don't subscribe to that the physical stores are all going to go away. I know some people do. I think one of the speakers this morning has said that, but I think he's wrong. How do you make that work? Because we're quickly getting to the point. I mean, some of us up here are building these systems where it's real time. Consumers can do what they want. But you've got to kick it back up the chain, to something real at some point. Up until the point the machines take over with 3D printers, and then we're all out of business, So, but right up to that point, I think that's something that's definitely coming. Is And I see a lot of kind of energy around that. And drop shipping is kind of one piece of that bigger, how do we make this all work so that we can have visibility to supply?
It's funny you mentioned 3D printers. In our agency, we just moved to a new office and a large workshop space next to it. We've always had a lab as part of our business, but traditionally it's always just been software development. And we're kind of heading in the direction of what's called the kind of the makers movement, but we're doing it for a specific reason, and that's because we see on the fairly near horizon the opportunity for us to be actually working with traditional retailers around this concept of kind of pop-up stores, which has been driven by kind of the hipster movement, but we will actually see that kind of move into the mainstream, where we're actually building out temporary stores, shipping in technology, building out brand-based experiences using the kind of technology we're all talking about here. The thing we're not worried about is inventory. We're not expecting to be stocking those stores with a lot of product. The example I use probably most of all about what we believe kind of the future of high street will look like is kind of more like what a bank looks like today. Think of kind of more exciting versions of that. A lot of customer service, a lot of interaction, a lot of screens. Certainly I see it on your side of the fence. I think Main Street and High Street's got a really bright future. I think it's really exciting. I think it's going to look completely different in 5 years to what it looks like today.
Go ahead.
I just want to say that, I agree exactly with what Jeremy had said and what Reese is echoing too. The idea that traditional retail could go away and you eliminate the store and the interaction with the consumer, I think would be a bad thing for e-commerce. I think, you can look, again, I brought up an example of the pop-up stores with Harper's Bazaar, and my competitors have worked on this great company called Bonobos, and they've created the ability, they were a pure play, I think, to begin with, and now people go there and interact with Bonobos service folks. It's not exactly the traditional retail, like going to a Lord & Taylor or a Macy's or whatever, but I think people do covet that kind of experience, and if they're going to spend money, you have to give them that kind of experience.
With Bonobos, it's kind of this great hybridization. It was pure vertically integrated retail, but 20% of Bonobos is other manufacturers' products. So they had, guys buying pants saying, I want to buy shoes. And they said, I don't know how to make shoes. So they immediately became a traditional retailer, buying shoes wholesale, putting them in their warehouse in New Jersey, shipping them out. And then Nordstrom came and said, hey, people like Bonobos, we want to sell your pants in our stores. And so then on that day, they became no traditional manufacturer. They make pants in China. They sell them wholesale to Nordstrom, who puts them in their DCs and ships them around the country. And now they are opening, guide shops where you can go down, you can schedule an appointment. They've got their iPad, they're going to talk you through their product line. I went to the grand opening one in San Francisco. It's really cool. So all of a sudden, within a matter of a few years, someone that had a very pure kind of defined, this is how we're going to be e-commerce. They are doing 4 things, 2 of which are no different again than what it would have looked like 30 years ago. And I find that really fascinating, how it kind of that hybridization of the strategies. And I think ultimately that's the idea of omnichannel. It's like there's no rules; it all just starts to pour together.
I think to the last point, and then we have to wrap up, really is, as you said, over the last 40 years, it's really been changes in demand. Now we're seeing changes on the supply side. But there's advantages to both sides. If you see this last quote here, if you give your customers a single view of you as a retailer, you in turn can get a comprehensive view of your customers. So there is a mutual sort of reciprocity between the two. The more they can see into your inventories, the more you can see into their behaviors and the things that they want to see on your site and in your store. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Thanks for the panel and your participation.